So it's a pleasure to be with you too today. My name is Tamei Elliott. I'm the Senior Manager of Scientific Programs for DIA Americas, and I'm joined by Dave Hanaman, who is the President and Co-Founder of Curavit, as well as Natalia, Husby, who is Business Development Manager with Curavit as well. And we have a very important topic to talk about today. But before we get into it, I just kind of want to set the stage and get your immediate reactions based off of what I'm just going to go over. So in 2022, as you know, the FDA released their draft guidance on the diversity plans. And then at the end of 2022, there was a passage of the Food and Drug Omnibus Reform Act, also known as FDORA, that significantly shifted the clinical trial landscape of diversity in clinical trials. And as FDORA is an FDA mandate, one focus of it is aimed at promoting diversity in clinical trials. And so in an article written by Natasha Messias, she had described that for sponsors and CROs, FDORA means that they will need to revise their current recruitment strategies to ensure representation from underrepresented population, as well as enhanced training and education at the study site level. And there was also mention of monitoring and tracking diversity metrics to ensure compliance with FDORA, as well as sponsors and CROs modifying their study designs. And then lastly, she also discussed addressing the logistical barriers that exist at sites and the challenges that do hinder and prevent participation in clinical trials. And so, Dave, what are your immediate thoughts with what I've just mentioned so far?
My immediate reaction to it is basically to point out the alignment of Curavit and our history with the history of diversity at the FDA and the sort of transition from guidance to mandates that you've just described. It's really symbiotic. I don't mean to say it's easy for us, but we didn't have to shift our thinking. And in many cases, we didn't have to shift what we're doing. We simply have begun to put structure and around and codify the practices that were already in place. And so let me explain that. I think everyone in the industry is on board, in this industry and others, with diversity initiatives across the board. The challenge is how do you make them real, and how do you make them practical, and how do you achieve the results? And when we started Curavit, we announced it in January of 2020, so just before the pandemic. And true to right to today, our mission from inception has been to design and execute so-called decentralized or virtual clinical trials. Virtual clinical trials, decentralized clinical trials, at their core, provide significant benefits in terms of pursuing diversity goals. The statistic that's often used is that 97% of the people who could participate in a clinical trial are never even exposed to it. And that disproportionately affects people who are socioeconomically, culturally, geographically removed from where trials are typically conducted or recruited. So if you think of somebody who's upper middle class and near a big city and in a solid healthcare system with a really switched on physician, they learn about clinical trials if they're appropriate for them. Somebody that is in sort of the opposite of each of those categories may not even hear about the trial. The beauty of decentralized clinical trials is that we can now recruit easily through the internet and bring trials to people in the 97%. The idea of not having to rely on sites for anything or not having to rely on sites for as much, and building trials around this idea of trials in the cloud, trials that meet the patient wherever they live, work, or play. And so diversity is an inherent benefit in running a decentralized clinical trial. So that's why I say it was easy for us we didn't even have to shift our thinking, because to us, one of the inherent benefits of the business we were in was achieving diversity. And there's other benefits as well, and there's other benefits that accrue from that model that are not just diversity related, but diversity is a big piece of it. So what I think you've seen what we've seen at Curavit is that many of these components were already things we were doing. We were doing them because they were the right thing for the science. We were doing them because it was the right thing that our customers often wanted to do ethically, and ultimately the right thing for the business. And without the guidance first and then the regulation that followed it, it was hard to sort of agree on maybe the priorities or what the metrics might be and so on. So the structure that the FDA has put around it sort of has helped us catalyze and put structure around the things we've been doing already, and then build a suite of services, or what we call a toolkit, in order to help our sponsors ensure that they are not only in compliance with the spirit of the guidelines, but with the regulations themselves. So there's a compliance aspect. I'll let you weigh in a minute. Natalia has been developing our DE&I, we call it IDEA Toolkit. She's the product manager on it. She's been interfacing with our customers and partners and prospects. So she knows, she can speak in great detail about the specifics of it. But I would, just sort of reinforce this notion that we've been doing these things all the way along, and now this is our opportunity to, the FDA guidance and mandates are the catalyst, the piece of salt in the sub-zero or the sub-32 degree water that allows us to now build a suite of services around this need.
So there's a few different parts to our IDEA toolkit, one of them being a preliminary situational analysis, which basically is when a sponsor comes to us with a study and they want to understand what populations might be affected when it comes to the therapeutic area, or when it comes to selecting sites, whether it's virtual or hybrid. What we do is we look at census data to try to identify potential locations if they want to, focus on a specific group that might be underrepresented in that field of study. And so that's kind of part of our preliminary work. We also use the FDA guidelines to, we've created a template for the diversity plan, and off of those guidelines we kind of go step by step with the sponsor to come up with a plan for their study. Another piece of that is, say for example, they're not entirely sure how to engage with certain communities. We've been getting to know different community partners and also different specialized organizations that focus with different groups of people, whether they're rural communities or ethnic or racially diverse communities. We talk to those partners or recommend them to the sponsors so that they can better learn how to engage with these communities and also understand the perhaps hesitancy to join a trial, if there is a hesitancy, or if it's just a barrier of access and education and things like that. We also do content review. So when you're, giving out information about the trials, from brochures to web pages and things like that, just making sure that the language is actually communicating in a way that people of different professional, academic backgrounds, health literacy backgrounds, and language backgrounds can understand. There's a dashboard that our operations team has developed to provide periodic near real-time updates to the sponsor, track the enrollment progress of different groups that are participating in the study, such as age, gender, race and ethnic backgrounds, and just to determine if there are certain trends, and if you do see a sudden change in the data, try to address and optimize for that.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate the insights that you all have shared. I've heard a lot from our attendees with the challenges that they're facing, and it seems to align with a lot of the solutions that you all have produced, and so that's good to hear that. And so to conclude, again, I want to thank Natalia and Dave for being here with me today, and for DIA, I am Tamei Elliott.